Yes, and welcome back to Coast Podcast. We're coming live from the Gold Coast Hub. Once again, we've stuck with the Coast to Coast. We are keeping the name. We're going to continue along that path. But if anyone wants to send any new names, I'd really appreciate it because I don't really like the name. How's that sound, Oscar?
Yeah, it was called Coast to Coast before I got here, so a change up wouldn't be the worst thing in the world.
So what could we change it to? I don't know. Yep. What about the bold and the beautiful? And I'm the beautiful.
That's not too bad. I'll just have to shave my head again. I mean, I've been there before and we could go back again. Or you could shave your beard and you could be the full bold.
Yep, that one. Oh, you're talking bald and the beautiful.
Bald and the beautiful.
Wow.
Instead of bold.
I see what you've done there. And we haven't talked about this before, but...
That's pretty good.
Well, it's a good start to the show because, let's be honest, it's not that positive at the moment. We've lost 3 in a row. The game on the weekend... not our best, and we're out of form, and we find ourselves towards the bottom of the ladder. 3 games in a row. It's not somewhere we've been regularly, but we have been here before, and I think overall it's an interesting environment to be in. Not only are we on the Gold Coast Hub where it feels like you never leave the footy club, but we aren't playing that well. So how do you see it as a young fella being over here, Oscar, with the results that are happening at the moment and where we are physically? How's it all intertwining in your brain?
Well, firstly, being over here is a first for me and it is for everyone. So I can't really compare it to what the feeling would be like if we were playing really well since we've been over here. But obviously disappointed in how we're going on field. I think off field and around the hub, we've actually got a pretty good balance within the playing group with what we're going to do and when we're training, some away time and hobbies for ourselves, but definitely not the way I envisioned the first 3 weeks in the hub would have gone.
No, I mean, you're coming over here and we said it from the start, we're coming over to win and play footy. So to not get the wins and not get the results, we're in a results-focused industry and our football club, not more than other clubs, but, you know, we judge ourselves on the success we have. Yes, we try to have a good culture and a unified playing group and great connections with everyone. But in the end, you're often as only as good as your last game. And at the moment, that hasn't been good enough. So Port Adelaide on the weekend, we played Saturday day, a change in environment. Oscar, you were dropped.
Yeah, I was dropped. So that was awesome.
I was also dropped, to be fair.
Yeah.
I was dropped. We were both dropped.
Until 10 minutes before the game, you were dropped.
Yes. How'd you see the game, mate?
I thought started off slow, and I think watching from home, there was a period in the third quarter where we really got back to playing our style of footy for the first 10, 15 minutes of that quarter, and things looked really good, and we went away from that towards the end of the game in another, as I said, bitterly disappointing, not only result, but also the processes weren't necessarily there. If we're in games and, footy's not all the time the best team wins. If we're in games and we lose by a little bit, or at least we know we stuck to our structures and played relatively well. But I don't think we can say that with any of our 3 games. We've been poor on all accounts.
Yeah, I think just consistency overall has probably been a major influence on our performance. And quite often you'll see the best teams are the most consistent. They can play their role, they can play their system, they can apply effort consistently. And it might not necessarily mean they're the best at all of those things, but they can consistently apply it through a whole game and therefore, blocks maybe a month or 2 months or a season, that they're the best teams. And right now we're not doing that. But I have learnt something along the journey, Oscar, that you can change consistency very quickly. Especially if you've got the right coaches in place, which is a tick for us, and you've got the right attitude within the playing group, which for mine is another tick. Yes, we haven't performed as well as we would have liked, but you can change things very quickly. And it seems like 2020 has been going for 6 years. It literally never ends, and we're only 4 rounds in.
Yeah.
So
well, that's the thing. I think a lot of people. And within the walls of the footy club, we're trying not to forget we're only in round 4. It feels like this time of year we're hustling up for finals. Basically, it's towards the end of the season, but we're only in round 4, and we just got to focus on playing good footy and continuing to build and be flexible. Obviously, with the change in schedule this week, we've got to be flexible. Things are changing week in, week out, and we're just going to have to keep rolling with it.
We had a couple of Well, we had 3 big milestones for the footy club. We had 2 200-game players, which is absolutely no mean feat. Jets' 200th overall AFL, played some games for Sydney prior to West Coast. He was a bit of a late starter though, so he's done well to string them together. Jack Darling, 200 for the footy club, has been a mainstay since he arrived at the club, and we had a first gamer in Jermaine Jones. You want to touch on a couple or one or all 3 of those boys?
Yeah, firstly, I'll start off with JJ. Jermaine's 21 years old, came from Geelong, spent 3 years on the list there and brings a lot of energy to the group. And I think if you watched on TV, I think you can see that, not only on field but off field. I'd say he's a dead set extrovert, and he's loud and he likes dancing and he's in your face, but it's probably something we need at the moment, a bit of energy to really galvanise the boys. JD, for as long as I've been at the club, has been, along with JK, the primary target up forward and a really, really good on-field leader of the football club. He's been really consistent since I've been here. I remember 2018, the first half of that year, he was almost the best player in the competition before he hurt his ankle.
All-Australian last year.
Yeah, All-Australian last year, and has done nothing but grow since I've been here. And then obviously Jets is probably the best kick in the AFL, hands down. Obviously, he's a great leader for all the Indigenous boys of the club. We've got a lot of them, and obviously with JJ debuting, I dare say we wouldn't have such a great Indigenous contingent without such a great leader in Jets for them.
So I think you hit the nail on the head with JJ and JD. JJ been great energy since he's been at the club. Got a fantastic story. Not fantastic story. He's got a story where he's come from, his upbringing, numerous foster homes, has had to fight for everything he's ever got, and to be able to, not only debut at AFL level for one footy team, but to do it again in another. It's hard enough if you've been silver spooned everything and everything's been in front of you, but he's had to work pretty hard, and credit to him, and hopefully we can see some more games out of him this year, but going forward as well. JD, terrific work rate, great on-field leader, like you said, has been consistent, what I just spoke about in terms of a team performance, but his consistency over a long period of time, that's why he's played 200 games, rarely has a bad game. Yes, as a forward, you're going to be in and out of games, but I think he always finds a way to impact it one way or another, and it's been a real strength of his, is his consistency over the, especially this last 3-4 years. He's become a big-time player, which he wasn't at the start of his career, but he's always found a spot in the team, and it's been a real credit to him. But I did want to speak a bit more at length of Jet Boy. I'm very close to Jets. 200 games at AFL level, it's an incredible achievement from any background or anybody. But I would say Lewis Jetta has impacted our footy club and is more of a reason than any single player on our list that we won the 2018 grand final. Lewis Jetta, number one by a long way. Not only the work he does in our Indigenous group at the footy club, we have a lot of Indigenous players here. He's led them for a long period of time with his actions, and he's also his off-field leadership. So, look at 2018 team, at Liam Ryan and Willie Rioli, both playing in Liam's first year in the AFL, Willie's second, but both very inexperienced guys. His work throughout that year with the Indigenous group and getting them to a position where the squad wins premierships, the influence Jets has on those boys, not only that, but what he does on the footy field for us is something that's unmatched by any player I've ever played with. I've played with Chris Judd, Ben Cousins, Dean Cox. Jets can influence a game like nobody else I've ever played with. I think earlier in his career at West Coast, he was publicly criticised for drifting in and out of games, but that's how Jet Boy is. He's a impact player. He's not going to have 30, never has, never will be that guy. He's a 10 to 20 touch sort of guy that if you give him 10 to 20 touches, 8 of those touches are resulting in goals, and that's how he plays. So that's his impact from a footy sense, but you only have to look at the 2018 grand final. You know what? You can look at the qualifying final against Collingwood. We don't win that game without Lewis Jetta. And we win that game if you replace most other players in our team, to be honest. But the decision he made in the last quarter to press the game, if you know the play I'm talking about, Collingwood trying to handball out of their back 50, it was Jets versus 3 Collingwood players. The way he was able to anticipate, read the game, cut off a handball, step on 3 steps and snap a ball from 45. But I guarantee you not one player in our team could have done that, not one other player. and potentially not many in the comp. So that gets us into a preliminary final. Without that, we lose that qualifying final and potentially don't even make the grand final. Take us to the grand final. Lewis Jetta, there's a moment in the third quarter, Liam Ryan goes for a footy that he would mark 9 times out of 10 and potentially has a moment where he has a little look at what's coming the other way, which I'm sure we've all done in our careers. Oscar?
Yeah.
You would have done that?
Yeah, I have done that. Not recently, but I've done it before.
Mate, I've done it. It's a scary game sometimes, and I think potentially Liam would admit that, you're running back with a flight and he had a look and dropped a mark. Collingwood rebounded and kicked a goal. Most players at that stage drop their head, don't impact the game for the rest of the game. There's footage of Lewis Jetta at three-quarter time grabbing Liam Ryan, and obviously from a close connection, I know what he said to him, but as an overall perspective, he just told Liam that you're not defined by one action like that. The only way you'll be defined is if we win a grand final. So you can either crack the and drop your head and you may as well sit on the bench for the rest of the game, or you can impact it. Well, Liam had a snap at goal that hit the post that he missed by a centimetre in the last quarter. He had a set shot at goal from exactly the same mark that he took instead of dropping. He had a set shot he missed. He could have even hit the post again. And then he was a part of the moment. He was a part of the McGovern to Vardy to Ryan to Dom Sheed. He kicked the ball to Dom Sheed. So, yes, Liam Ryan had a bit to do with that. But without Lewis Jetta, Liam Ryan drops his head in that last quarter and we don't win the 2018 flag. And we weren't in that 2018 grand final without Lewis Jetta cutting that ball off against Collingwood. So 200 games to this footy club, he should be right up there with the greatest of all time that's ever played for our club. And I don't think many people have thought about that or, hopefully on listening to me may be able to reflect and agree with that. But it's not an obvious choice. You've got your legends of the club that are on the wall, captains of the club, premiership captains like Worsfolds. And Jetta doesn't get mentioned in those, but he should. And getting to 200 games, bloody good effort.
Absolutely. On the weekend, one player was best on ground. That was Charlie Dixon. Obviously, he's probably been the only key forward so far this year to really rip a game apart. Obviously, with the shortened quarters, team defences have been pretty good and scoring is down. And we haven't really seen a key forward tear apart a game. And he played probably one of the better games that has been played so far this year. How do you see how that went on the weekend, Scully?
Yeah, it's a great podcast, this one. You and I got dropped before the game. Key forwards absolutely lit us up that I had a part in playing. Look, I think Charlie, I've played on him a few times. Didn't have the matchup on the weekend, but as a backline, doesn't really matter who's playing on who. Whoever kicks goals against us, and we haven't been able to stop that enough this year. But Charlie's always been a big, strong guy. At times, he's been inconsistent. I don't know Charlie personally, but I'm sure he'd admit to that. I've been inconsistent as a player, so I'm not being critical. But the year he's putting together at the moment, he's one of, if not the leading forward in the comp. His sheer size has been one thing for his career. He's always been a big guy, but he just looks fit and dangerous. And I think overall they're working together very well as a forward line, which is really helping Charlie, and full credit to them. And not embarrassed, but he tore our backline apart. Couldn't stop him.
I think that's a great point you made about how well they work together. It's probably something our team cohesion has been missing. And I think in particular, if you watch on the weekend, there are a number of opportunities where whether it was TB or someone else on Charlie Dixon, it seemed like he had a clean run at the ball, and sitting back from afar when you don't get the whole, I suppose, bird's eye view of the game, you think, how is he getting such a good run and jump at the ball? Why is no one putting body on him? He's one of the better players on the ground at this stage. It's because of how well they work to body up and defend our other defenders. So a small forward would come in and whack Tommy Brass out the way. He'd fight to get back into the contest, but might be half an inch off, which allows them to take the mark. They played really well as a forward line, and they're looking really cohesive throughout the ground. So that's probably one of the reasons. Well, the main reason, which I saw it from an outsider's perspective on the weekend, as to why we lost.
They're on top of the ladder, and sometimes teams can end up on the top of the ladder, and it's just a bit of a circumstance thing where they've played some teams and beaten them, and look at that, we're on top of the ladder. Put it on the top of the ladder because they're playing well as a team and doing a lot of little things right. And it was good to see firsthand, and hopefully we can take a bit of a learning experience out of it and just get better. I know you don't want to ask about it, Oscar, so I'll just start talking about it. I got reported on the weekend. You got anything to say about that, Oz?
Yeah, you did get reported on the weekend. That is factually correct.
Yeah,
I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, look, it was. I've spoken on WA radio this morning about it, so I've done it a little bit, but it was disappointing. Firstly, that I let the team down. I was pretty flat after the game because I felt like for a long time I hadn't done that. Let the boys down. My role in the team is a complimentary one. It's not a superstar one. I try my best, but I'm not a superstar, and I'm in the team to support others. And felt like I'd let people down because, don't know, it's been really hard to articulate how or why it happened. Headbutting Zach Butters, I can't bounce around the fact that's what happened. So rarely regret anything that happens on the footy field. I think things happen too quickly and decisions get made on the spot that if you regret them, like, you're just not going to survive at AFL level. You're not going to be able to look back and go, oh, geez, I wish I did that differently, because it's happened. So I've tried to take a pretty pragmatic approach to it. I apologise to Zach. If I had my time again, no, I wouldn't do that. And I'm a leader at this football club and have been in the game and experienced enough things to know, one, that's not the right thing to do. Two, not good leadership whatsoever, poor leadership. And three, I've had a pretty good record in being able to handle myself when I get frustrated. So it was disappointing on every level. And yeah, I was flat overall for letting the team down. But, you've got to be able to move forward on some of these things as well. Like, you can't sit around and drag your feet and mope around. It's one action. I would say it's not a pattern of behaviour, given my record and experience in the game. You should judge people on patterns rather than events. If you start judging people on events, letting events define people, it's when you start making accusations and comments and criticisms that aren't true and they're not reflective of the person. It's just reflective of the event. So, yeah, disappointing. My bad. No one else's fault. I'm a man. Own up to my own actions and own them, and we move forward.
That's a good point you make about not regretting things happen on the football field. Obviously, some things happen which you would like to take back or have another way. But as a young player, it's something which I'm still learning about, whether I miss a set shot at goal or don't impact a contest. No, not dwelling on that throughout the game and into the next week, which is often how you can find players go into slumps of form, I suppose, by allowing a previous action to keep going through their head and then they keep on repeating.
What's something that you've had that's been like that?
So I had one against Brisbane late in the game. We're coming back into the game and I didn't play well against Brisbane, and hence why I didn't play on the weekend. And I think that throughout the game, not playing well, I took a mark late in the game and I think we were 3 goals down and gave us if I'd kicked it, it was a shot I should have kicked, a snap from about 20, 25 metres out. To get us back in the game, and with all the thoughts going out of my head, I just couldn't help but think I need to kick this, otherwise I'm not going to be playing my role, hence I'll probably be in trouble. Due to that, I'm worrying about the action more so and the outcome rather than the actual processes of kicking the goal. I don't kick the goal, don't have impact on the game, and then get dropped and watch the game on the weekend, which obviously was disappointing, but I think I've been pretty level-headed, and I'm a relatively level-headed person where I understand why I wasn't playing on the weekend. Obviously, team balance and bringing in the second ruckman to work alongside Nick and the other midfielders is a preference call for each club, and it's something we've done for a while. We've always generally played 2 ruckmen with Nick. We played 2 ruckmen when we won the premiership in 2018 with Scotty Lysette and Vards. So I'm understanding of that, and although, don't get me wrong, bitterly disappointed to have not played on the weekend and be able to contribute, I'll take it on the chin and take it as a lesson to get better and something I can learn from next time I'm out in the ground.
It's a bloody good learning point listening to, people forget how old you are. How old are you, Oscar?
I just turned 21.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Making me feel very old and looking very old, but it's a very good point and learning point for young guys coming through the system. And yeah, we're talking about 2 very different things here, missing goals and headbutting people, right? So not at all putting them in the same category, anywhere near it, but the regret and the holding on to a feeling or how you feel about something, it literally doesn't help you. So, and the only way to learn that is by doing it and being dropped and making mistakes and being punished and being publicly criticized. And you don't get better at doing any of this and dealing with things like you're talking about without doing it. And then if you don't learn, see you later. I guarantee you're gone. I'm not talking about you, just I've seen them come, seen them go over my time. If you can't deal with adversity and things not going your way, then you won't cope at AFL level. I think that's the biggest determination of why people either last or go. And we're talking about a couple of 200-game players at the footy club. The only way you play a lot of games is, yes, skill, hard work, luck, but the ability to move on from mistakes and adversity and deal with it is why people play. And it's why people like me, who I'm not the most skilled and I'm not going to say I'm not the hardest worker. I work hard, but overall I think can cope with things not going your way. I think that's a big thing. And it sounds like you're going the right direction, mate, but you're probably going to get dropped. You're probably going to miss goals. You're probably going to get left out of teams. You're probably going to stuff up some more. And the way to learn is to do it, mate.
Absolutely.
You are on Coast to Coast. I haven't really been doing the little back feeds of what we're actually listening to. You're on Coast to Coast with Will Schofield, myself, and Oscar Allen.
Myself.
Well, you got something else to throw at me, mate?
I was just going to talk about the scrimmage on the weekend, or lack thereof.
Explain what the scrimmage is.
So the scrimmage is when the non-AFL boys, so guys that aren't picked for senior selection, we generally, the first 2 weeks here, we played a scrimmage or practice match against the first week, the Gold Coast Suns boys that didn't play, and then the Brisbane boys that didn't play. Obviously, we've had shorter numbers, so we had 12, I think, in the first week with Gold Coast, and had to borrow 4 or 5 of their players to make it a 17-on-17 game. But Port Adelaide only brought a squad of 30, I think, for the game. Therefore, there was no scrimmage to be had, and then the boys just had a pretty tough training session on the day of the game.
Yep.
The morning of, and it's something which I'm assuming will be happening for the remainder of time we're here. We're playing no more teams that are based in the Gold Coast, therefore it's highly unlikely they'll bring a whole squad of 45, not only for logistical reasons, but financial. It's way more expensive for the AFL, and I understand that. So it's going to be interesting to see how younger players that aren't getting a run at AFL level can really work hard to keep improving on their craft and getting the most out of their training session, so that when they are called up, they're right to go and play a role for the team.
So who's been some standouts? You're probably better connected to some of the younger fellas than I am. Who's been playing well in these scrimmages? And they're called scrimmages because they're not games. They're not 4 quarters of 20 minutes. Some of them have been 6 quarters of 10 minutes each, and they've been playing around. And like you said, they've been different numbers. So who's been standing out? Who's been training well? Who's been playing well?
I think one of them who's done it and been training well all the last year as well, Jake Waterman. He's a really talented forward, and just with team balance at this moment, isn't finding his way in the side, but is working really hard and having really good form down there. Braden Ainsworth as well. Bailey Williams, a young developing backup ruckman and key forward. He's working really hard. Harry Edwards, your man, Scuzz. Key defender. Tough as nails. There's a lot of young boys coming through. Luke Foley, Xavier O'Neill, an inside midfielder. I could rattle them all off, but I think one of the biggest positives we've taken out of our time here is the standard set by some of the younger players have been something which has been really good to look at and take back with us to Perth.
By some of the standards set, what exactly do you mean? I think, and I could be putting words in your head. It's as senior players, we've got a game to look forward to at the end of the week. We got something to work towards, but realistically, these younger guys are over here as a support mechanism and to help, squad mentality kind of thing. What have they been doing? What have they been doing well around the hub you think that's been good? What's been good about it?
Well, training wise, as you alluded to, with no games on the weekend, often throughout the week, guys playing, you think I'll work really hard throughout the week and then get the rewards on the weekend by perhaps playing well and playing my role, and I will play well because I've done all this extra work from Monday to Friday to allow me to perform at my best on Saturday afternoon. When there is no Saturday afternoon and it's just another training session, the ability to keep doing everything you can Monday to Friday to really harness and improve as a player. Because the reason that myself, for instance, I'm not doing the same things as JK is doing because he's already been in the system for 13 years working hard every day and his body's different to mine and he maybe needs a little bit more time to recover, whereas I need to do extra gym sessions, extra goal kicking sessions, extra swimming sessions to get to the stage where he's at or try to get to that stage. Off field as well, the energy they've brought's been really, really great. Obviously families, guys with families missing their kids and their partners, and I can't imagine how tough it would be to be here without them. But bringing that energy is trying to lift the spirits of the boys, and I think it's something that will look as a positive as well. I mean, on field we're probably not bringing the energy and endeavour that we would like, but off field and in the hub, I think we've got a pretty good environment going on right now.
All right, that's hub life at the moment here on the Gold Coast. Let's look to the future a little bit. Fair bit going on. We were playing Richmond Thursday night as of about 24 hours ago, and speaking to one of our coaches, I won't say who he is just to protect his identity, but he said we finished Saturday night. He worked pretty hard on Richmond, doing a full analysis. Sunday, got up in the morning, prepared all of his slides for a bit of a look Sunday for the boys in the Arvo, and then a real prezzo on Monday. He lost his hard drive in that process, and so he did all the work again Sunday night on Richmond, put it all together again, and then Monday got the news that we weren't playing them. So when we do play Richmond, he'll be very prepared. But that's just an example of this change. So we are now playing Sydney Saturday afternoon.
Yep.
And it was just a very quick change, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, like you said, behind the scenes, there's a lot going on. I think from almost well before we play Port Adelaide on the weekend, the club and coaching staff are well into their preparation for the week before. Otherwise, there's simply not enough time, especially off a 5-day break. So a lot of things changed. We weren't having a main training session because it's almost impossible to off a 5-day break. And like you said, we were just all in the gym and someone came in and tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Oh, we're playing Sydney on Saturday." And I brushed off. "No, we're not." Like, shut up. Stop being stupid. We're not playing Sydney on Saturday. And then get back to the hotel or the resort, and 10 minutes later, Simo calls a team meeting. "All right, boys, we're playing Sydney on Saturday. Here's 5 minutes of the game and do with it what you will." So you need to be fluid and ready to adjust. But I mean, it's not the end of the world. We get a 7-day break, so I dare say some of the boys who are pulling up a little bit sore are happy to have an extra 2 days to get their bodies right. But we just look forward to the weekend and providing a better performance, which everyone deserves.
Yep. We've been in it for a while, this COVID changing season, so I don't think it was much of a shock to anyone, to be honest. Like you said, you did say it was, shut up, you're joking, but changes is probably what we're getting used to, which is something that we haven't been used to as athletes. Pretty rule-governed behaviour sort of group. This is what you need to do. This is who we're playing for the next 22 weeks. This is the schedule for the season. That doesn't happen anymore, so changing to Sydney, look at the positives. Like you said, we've got a 7-day break instead of a 5-day break. We do have the time to prepare now. And, Sydney's travelling up to play us, which is becoming our home ground now. So I know Richmond were as well, but still, I guess, a home game for us. And you just got to shift and do your prep on Sydney now. So we'll be fine. It's still a game of footy.
Yeah, I think we're almost become desensitised to the shock of a big change like this. I imagine in the middle of last year, 3 days out from a game, you get told, "Oh, you're actually not playing then," and you're playing 2 days later. It'd be a big shock and massive news. It's just business as usual now. There's been more, I suppose, earth-shattering things that have happened this year by tenfold than a game getting changed 2 days and playing a different opponent. So everyone's just got to go with it. It's the same for everyone in the competition. We're not different to anyone else. So we just need to prep, as you said, like we can and perform on the weekend.
We're going to see some more changes in 2020, I believe. So get used to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, I've got 2 things to finish off. It's been a decent little session for us today. A couple of opinion pieces, perhaps, I just want to throw at you. First one, state of the game. How do you see it at the moment? You're watching a bit of footy. How are games looking from take your player's hat off, okay, and put your your supporter, watcher's hat on? How's it looking?
I think watching as a supporter, the first thing you'll notice is obviously scoring's down. The way I see that's due to two main factors. Obviously, the most obvious one anyone can see is the games are shorter, so there's less time to score goals. Perfect. The second one is due to the quarters being shorter. Teams' defenses are more, I suppose they can go harder at pressing the game and really bringing a high pressure brand of football, not allowing teams to get forward and lock it in their own forward line. They can do this and maintain it throughout the game for longer because the extra 6-7 minutes that each quarter would go for is no longer there.
So you're saying teams defending better because of the shorter games?
Yeah, I think so. That's my opinion on it. Just because I feel like players, that extra, I don't have any figures or stats. I feel like a lot of scoring would happen in that last 4 to 5 minutes of game time in a quarter, which isn't happening anymore. They're my main outlooks on it.
There's potentially some younger teams winning games of footy, and not me, but people probably didn't think they were going to win games. Gold Coast being one, Carlton being another. Do you think the changing season, and I'm not talking about the hub, I'm talking about playing round one and then having 3 months off and then, every week it changes. Do you think changing seasons would impact older teams more than younger teams from a mentality point of view?
Potentially, yeah. Well, guys that just come into the system, and even myself, I'm still learning the day-to-day routine. And it's as you always allude to, it's a very routine-based lifestyle. Someone that's been in this lifestyle for 13, 14 years like yourself to all of a sudden be told all this change and your body is so used to preparing a certain way every week, week in, week out. I do this, I do this, I do this. To now, all that's thrown out the window and go out and play and see make the best of it you can. I'm not going to say that's definitely the case. But yeah, it's an interesting point.
Yeah, I mean, that's my point. I've made you, extrapolate a little bit. But yeah, I was just thinking about that's potentially, you see Richmond, everyone tipped Richmond to win the grand final this year. Most experts did. And they're the same 1 and 3, or no, 1 and 2.
1/2
with a draw.
2.
So, and we're not going well either. But to be honest, not making excuses, just trying to have a look at why things are happening. And I think probably overall, we're just not winning games of footy. Last one, ex-players in the media. You and I did a bit of a walk jog today. Just had a bit of a chat initially, and I'll finish on this one.
Yeah.
Perhaps you can lead me in somewhere. Yep. But how do you see when ex-players go into the media? I mean, people who have been listening to you talk. You can articulate yourself quite well, and you're a young guy, but potentially you've got some future media aspirations. How do you see ex-players in the media?
Let me start off by saying, firstly, I think it's great that ex-players are in the media. You can provide a different insight into the way that the AFL landscape is working and give a different perspective to just commentators and people looking from the outside in. But I will say, and I did mention to you this morning, one thing that really does frustrate me is I feel like being in the players, I'll say union, there's almost an unwritten rule of respect you have for other players because you know how much hard work you have to put in to get to this stage into your career and your life, and you're living out your dream playing AFL footy. And no matter what anyone else does to you, you still have an underlying level of respect of what they've done to get to this stage in their career. Whether they're a young player, senior player, it doesn't matter. Everyone's worked hard to get where we are, so you should respect that. And when a lot of, I think more and more have been coming out now, I'm not going to name names.
We'll just say some.
Some old AFL players.
I'm an old AFL player.
Retired AFL players who are in the media can make really outlandish comments almost for shock value, calling to the end of blokes' careers, saying this guy's never going to make it. And I get it. It is your job to make those calls, but there can be different ways, and you can be more analytical about the way you give feedback and provide different insights rather than blatantly calling for players' heads.
Right, so I would challenge, I think that's a great point you make, right? And I think you've done well to sort of just dip your toes in the water a little bit. I'll go a little deeper. I would challenge that. Is that a part of the job? Is part of the job being so critical to a point where you're right, ending players' careers, bringing up things to do with mental health and coming back on performance like, yes, you're in the media to analyze and to comment and to have opinions, but the thing I get frustrated with is when you see ex-players, I'm not talking about media as a whole, I'm talking about ex-players, you see them come in with an opinion, and it's just an opinion, just like you and me are doing right now. We don't have a lot of facts, but if you're having just an opinion, I feel like you got to have more facts and analysis behind it than just a thought. Got to be, especially being ex-players, you got a lot more respect than a lot of the media, I think. You come from a position, like you said, of knowing what it takes to get to the level and to be a part of what being a player is. So then to, finish up and then to suddenly, it's not turning on your own, but it's, I think, great. Be critical, have your opinion, but base it on facts and things that are real and not just an opinion on how you feel at the time. And if you're in a grumpy mood, you're just going to sledge someone off, and because it impacts people, it impacts players, it impacts players' families, because it's your job in the media to make comments, but it's an AFL player's job to perform and to get picked and if you're a very good ex-player and you start making comments about people's careers, the noise builds. The way that the media is built and the way that social media runs these days, things that are said and thrown into the wind to see if it sticks, sometimes they do. And I think at times the care level is reduced, if not gone altogether, of what impact you have when you say something on radio, in the newspaper, on social media. We saw it with McKenna last week. People just writing him off, reports coming out, this and that, and they're all wrong. And I saw Brian Taylor, an ex-player, say to a journo, you got an insatiable thirst to be right, but an even more insatiable thirst to be first. And that flows on into ex-players by maybe it is driven by employers. Maybe it is driven by media companies saying, well, if you're not going to have a divisive opinion that gets people talking, gets chins wagging, don't say it at all. But I think there's a real gap in media to have a balanced, honest opinion without being critical and degrading to players' careers. And it's like they're not trying, or if a mistake's made, it's a personal attack on everyone else. It's just, there's a real, I don't see a lot of ex-players with a balanced, like I said, a balanced, honest opinion that can articulate themselves with some sort of facts and analysis behind it. There's not a lot doing it. And to the guys that aren't doing it, I think either it's employer enforced and it's people saying, well, if you don't get something, happening here, then don't even bother saying it, or they can't do it. They're not intelligent enough. I'm not going to say clever. They're not intelligent enough to be able to have a conversation and criticize someone, but base it on something, not just see something, that's the end of his career, never playing another game for the footy club. When that comes from people that are legends of other footy clubs and respected by that footy club, and they say things about their own footy club, I would personally think that's, a level of intelligence that's not quite there. You can't base an opinion and articulate yourself well enough to be able to do it in a sensible way that you can create conversation by saying different things. But when you take things to a critical and degrading level, it's disappointing.
Well said, Scully. I think that'll do us for today.
I had a couple of rants today, didn't I?
Yeah, it's been a tough podcast for us both to be on with the recent activities of the week, but
it's all right though. I feel like we're having good conversations and being honest about it, but we're not trying to annoy anyone. We're not trying to create a conversation starter. We're just being honest about it, I think.
Just speaking our minds. Should never be anything wrong with that.
Oscar Allen, as always, been a pleasure. It's been absolutely flawless, to be really honest. How this podcast doesn't have greater legs in the community, I'm going to do something about it this week. I'm putting it up on social to get us going.
Perfect.
Oscar Allen, Will Schofield, Coast to Coast. Bye-bye.
Bye.